Okay, this is going to be the second last show before spring break. So again, no show next week. I didn't make that announcement, but until now. But I am joined by local athlete, local football player. We go to church together.
Hey.
Jaden Martens. So yeah, Jaden, welcome to the show. I was almost going to say local celebrity, and part of me kind of says that. I don't know. I was doing a bit of research on you before I came on the show. Obviously, had to
Yeah.
do some. Just can't wing these things. Even though this is probably episode number 19, number 90 on Zoom or whatever. But yeah, you do have a bit of an interesting story, don't you? So,
A little bit.
yeah, just a bit, right? So that, again, that's why I bring people on here. And again, just to tell us your story. So
Yeah.
what is exactly your story, Jaden? Starting maybe from a young age and how you transitioned into football, your love for football, and I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, totally. Um yeah, I was born into a family that watches football religiously. So grew up watching Randy Moss, all-time favorite player. And yeah, just always having football on, having like my cousins play, like Foster played Bisons, Braden played, in the States there. And so I had some role models to look up to that really just inspired, to play the game, right? And
Right.
so yeah, so I played from crunchers, which is like the youngest you can play as tackle football anyway. And loved it from the start. My dad was my coach, and um he's always been behind me for that, and it's been awesome. He coached me all the way through Raiders, and
Nice.
uh and and then yeah, obviously supported me through all my endeavors after that. But yeah, starting off in Raiders, we had a core group of guys that were fantastic. Christian, good, core group that we started off with, and my age group has always been an uberly talented age group of football players, and so that has helped me look much better on the field because as a receiver, lots of things need to happen before I get the football, right? So, um, but but yeah, I've always been super tall. So even from a kid, like always been taller than everyone else and bigger in that way. And so naturally as a receiver, that was an advantage to just use my height. And and yeah, I've always been kind of this lanky, kind of awkward athlete almost and kind of unique in that way. Um, so yeah, I've like I said, I've played since I was as young as possible. And I've always looked up to my cousins and to NFL specifically. I watched NFL and I'm a big Vikings fan, obviously because of the hat. Uh and yeah, so but yeah, so as my development though, like I played every sport as a kid, and I find that that was a big part of it was that um volleyball and basketball and all these different sports, you can bring them into and they intermingle a lot, right? So, so I was able to use, let's say, for instance, in basketball, boxing people out, right? Like as a big-bodied receiver, that is all about body positioning, getting yourself between the football and the defender, and um, and so like as a kid, most of my development was from other sports and just playing sports all the time. But kind of integrating into, a high school environment where now, okay, everyone's developing, everyone's getting bigger and stronger, and you got to be in the gym and you got to be, doing all these camps outside of it, right? Like, it turned a lot more into how can I technically advance and get better. And then also being very lucky, I played with a guy named Sawyer Thiessen since I was like 5 years old. So I've had the same quarterback every single year, and we played literally every level together. And so like what an advantage to have such a good quarterback, first of all, and also have the ability to gain connection with a guy that you've played now like 10, 15 years with, right? Um, you look at the best guys in pro sports, it's always there's a connection with that quarterback, right? They know where they're going to be and they know they put the ball in that spot.
Yeah.
Um, and you look at like Aaron Rodgers and Vontae Adams, that's probably the best example that you can come up with, right? So, um, but yeah, and so throughout the entire time though, I've always made it important that um, football is a sport and it is fun. And that no matter what happens, that I'm going to enjoy it and love playing the sport. And if it doesn't take me to um, pro sports and I don't make a career out of it, um, that's okay because that's not who I am and that's not my identity. And so, especially going into high school, I made it very clear um, that football was not going to dominate my life. So for instance, like um, I'm a Christian and I'm outspoken in my Christianity, and I made that very clear in the locker room, and guys would respect me because I lived it out that way, right? And it was actually a part of who I was and not just an act that I would put on. Um, and so I never really dealt with necessarily the um, what do they call it? Like tampering, or like, different influences like that people maybe had. And I was very lucky that I got that respect from people. Um, yeah, to freely just play the sport and have fun and not have to deal with all that crap that comes with it. Um, but yeah, so starting high school now, kind of how football was going for me. Um, I played JV to start. A lot of guys played up to varsity. I was part of the very first Sabres JV team. Um, and that year we went to the playoffs. We made it to semifinals. We ended up losing in a heartbreaker in the semifinals. Uh, but it was really good to like kind of slowly get into that next step in high school and like especially with the Sabres moving up to Division 3, which is the top division in uh in high school sport in Manitoba here. Um just to slowly kind of develop and being able to actually start and play full time, right? Like that was huge. And to also have great coaches like I don't know if you guys know Kerry Friesen, but Kerry Friesen was a big help in my development in JV. And so shout out to him. But um but yeah, and so I was lucky to have that year to kind of develop before I go to varsity. Obviously, going into varsity, we had a young team. We had like my grade 11 year, we had 5 grade 12s and the rest were all grade 11 10s. So it's really just like I said, this core age group of guys, Isaac Dawkins, Sawyer Thiessen, Peyton Falk, like we had a core group of guys that moved up and were very talented. And so we were able to have a lot of the starting positions because of that. Um, and we still had success. We actually made playoffs that year. We had about middle of the road season. And we did get first rounded by Vincent Massey, but it was one of those things like we knew we were coming back stronger next year, all a year older, and we saw a lot of success in that year, and in the fact that we were still younger than everyone, right? Um, and so, but yeah, the big step was going into grade 12. Um, I played Team Manitoba, U18, and uh, and being able to play just a higher level of competitiveness and you're playing the best of the best, right? So it's just a completely different environment, it's completely different tenacity and size and things like that. Um, it pushed me to not only just be a receiver and catch the ball and do all these finesse plays and be like almost too nice on the field. Like there was almost like a tenacity, there was an aggressiveness that came out of that where um, I kind of figured out how to use my size and how to yeah, just push people around a bit more. And so I kind of found this side of me that could block really, really well. And obviously being really tall and having size, that was an advantage. Too bad we don't have tight ends in Canada because I probably would have played tight end if I could. Uh,
Well,
um,
totally, right? Yeah.
yeah, like
I
just
would, yeah, I would classify you maybe as the tight end position. Obviously, if you're down south, you would be playing that most likely.
yeah, like it's the and so uh but yeah, so obviously in Canada we have slot backs. The inside slot backs kind of play tight end-ish, but not quite. Not the same anyway.
Right.
Um But to this point, though, I'd been playing wide out my entire career. So like play on the outside, usually one on one. That's kind of my thing. Go catch the ball on top of someone's head and moss them, right? That's kind of the shtick, right? That's what I did. And so um, me being not necessarily the like elite athlete, right? Like to be super fast and all that stuff, I had to take advantage of size and and I have really good hands. That's kind of what I had to work with here. So then it was like I'm not gonna drop the football and I'm not gonna um and I'm just gonna body people. I'm gonna use my positioning, right? Um so I learned techniques like, you kind of you lean into the guy before and you chicken wing out and you kind of like just small things, right? Like just to get separation last minute and quick hands and late hands and all this stuff and it was all if I'm not necessarily elite speed and all these things that get you separation, how else can I be elite in other ways that will separate me, right?
Right.
Like, 'cause, uh, yeah, like especially being a receiver, right? That's all it is quarterback's not gonna look at you unless you have separation, right? Like that's the main
If they're
thing.
covered, you ain't going your way.
If you don't look open, you're not getting the football.
That's
Unfortunately, that's
exactly
how that
it.
works. So, though, if you ask the receivers on the Sabres, I might have been covered a few times and Sawyer still threw the football, but that's besides the point.
Right.
Uh, um, yeah, so like going into my grade 12 year though, I discovered this blocking, this physical side of me um that I didn't really use before that and kind of like that was a big part of it, especially because in my grade 12 year, we only had like out of our 8 regular season games, we had 6 rain games. So it was like not the ideal weather for catching the football. And so even though it was very successful and I still had like 600 yards and 3 touchdowns, it was like we're playing in rain games every single time, right? So
Right.
the advantage to block and to open up that next level, right? Like that takes a run that goes 10 yards to, the house because now you got that second level blocking, right?
Totally.
And Coach Fettis, he instilled that in our receiver core. We had comments from teams all the time about how do you get your receivers to block downfield? Like unreal, the effort that the boys had. It was something special actually. Um, Once again, we did end up losing in the semifinals that year, and another heartbreaker to St. Paul's, which we still classify as the final game because the other side it wasn't even going to be close. Whoever won that game was winning the finals kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Totally.
um, but but yeah, and so that was like yeah, that was my high school career was filled with success. I was lucky enough to get all-star honors all my years out there, and I got offensive player of the year for our team rewards anyway 2 times, and uh, and end up I just got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year as well, which was
I saw that article.
a nice little honor. Nice little surprise. So, yeah, but lots of success in high school. Thankful for the coaching that I got from that, and yeah, it really set me up to kind of go to the next level.
Well, I mean, look, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, if you look at the Steinbach lineage here,
Mhm.
if you look at maybe the Eric Lepke's with the volleyball, and then you're with the football. And if you go back years ago, Michelle Swansky, hi Michelle, right?
Yeah.
With all of that, and I don't want to miss anyone. We had just a Special Olympian who won, Millington.
Hmm.
I sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. It's just again the local talent, and yeah, for you to be inducted. I mean, shoot, you were born in the year 2002.
Yeah.
Again, I have to realize I'm not young anymore, and that is awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome that you got inducted.
Yeah.
Because kids now will look at you
Mm.
and say, "Hey, I want to be like Jaden Martens." And I mean, I think that's a huge feather in your cap. I know that may be cliche, but I think that's a big thing. And then your transition out of high school to U of M. So what did Brian Dobie tell you to convince you to come to U of M 45
Yeah.
minutes ago?
So it was kind of funny. It was one of those things I left it where I didn't send out film to anyone. I wasn't really doing anything crazy to get recruited. And I kind of just left it at, if it's gonna happen, then, God was gonna put me in that spot. And so playing Team Manitoba though, that's where I got all my looks. Like if I could recommend that to anyone, that's the place to get looks to go to the next level in Canada anyway. And so like um start practicing with the team, all this stuff. And obviously a lot of the coaches that coach Team Manitoba were coaches that coach the U of M Bison. So it was like they're scouting while you're practicing, right? So
Right.
um like Coach Carhut was my head coach. He was their special teams coordinator. And then like Coach Nauyokes, that was the receivers coach. He's the receivers coach or he was the receivers coach for the Bisons. Then you got on the other side, obviously, there was a bunch of defensive coaches as well, right? So um and so it was one of those things where all of a sudden after like like after you make the team and you start practicing and then obviously Dobie comes and starts talking to you once he came to me anyway and he was like, hey, like we've been hearing about this guy that's number 84 on the Sabres, but we have no idea who this guy is. Now I can finally put a face to the mystery man that plays for the Sabres. And it was kind of funny. He just like he's so good at, like, he's such a good guy and so good
Yeah,
at talking and like and super easy to talk to. Like we talked all the time throughout the entire trip out to, out to we were in Kingston, Ontario. So out in Kingston there and like the whole time, he's joking around, he's getting to know you and like it was just one of those things that was just such an easy such a likable guy, right? So
right.
it was cool and so um yeah, so right off the bat, it was a good first impression. It was a good like it felt good to be recruited, right? Like, especially when you're not expecting it. It was just like one of those things where it was like, oh, like it feels good to be wanted and it feels good to be talked up. Obviously they talk you up, right? Like that's a big thing. You talk to any coach at the tournament, right? They're going to talk you up. They're going to tell you what you're good at. They're going to tell you what they see in you, what they want you to come to the program, right? So,
Totally.
um, and so for me, coming out of that, it was like, um, they're gonna tell you all the good things and they're gonna tell you a lot of that stuff, but it's also good to like have things that you're looking for and be picky and you can be patient too. Like you don't have to necessarily jump on an offer right away just because you got one, right? Like there's once the offer's on the table, they leave that there, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Right.
not going away.
No.
And so for me though, it was an easy decision. Like I was talking with some other coaches and stuff like that, but I had it in my head right away. I didn't want to go far from home because I love playing for the people that put into me, right? Like so my family, my friends, my coaches, like they all get to come watch me play then, right? If I stay here. And that was really important to me was that I could be here. Plus, I mean, the Bison's facility was brand new coming out of that too, right? Like state of the art, beautiful, beautiful facility. And um, and so it just seemed like the right fit for me. So I ended up committing like a week into August when I got back, which is like the earliest that you can commit to an offer. But yeah, so that was cool, and you got to go through all the process. So first of all, obviously he brings you to the facility and you get to tour the facility and he shows you all the stuff and here's your locker and here's all these coaches. He's introducing you to Coach Mitchell, who's the OC at the time, and like you get to kind of talk with everyone. Everyone's all happy and excited, and they're hyping you up, right? Like he's just look how tall this guy is, like he's just like through the roof, and like it's just, um, oh man, like so many good memories, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just such an exciting time, and especially just a dream come true, right? Like um, never would have seen myself going farther than high school, and so like to have that opportunity was insane. And like, but then it kind of put a little twist in it because after the whole committing process, that's when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Right. So the next spring, before I graduated, COVID hits. And so now that puts a whole wrinkle into um what my first couple years of university actually looked like, right? So, um, going we did like some practices every once in a while just to like, but you had to do all these screening and whatever. It was a whole ordeal, right? You're doing online school, so you're never at the university or at the stadium because you can't go inside of it. And so like my first year of university was really just like throw arounds with guys and no coaches were allowed to be there. So it was just like you're just there with a bunch of players hanging out, throwing around, doing one-on-ones and so it almost seemed like an off year. It just felt like we weren't actually playing football, right? Like there's just a whole break. Like we bought a gym so I could put a gym in our garage because like you had to work out somewhere and like it was just what a wild and unique experience.
That was unique. You were doing extensive OTAs, optional team activities for
Yeah,
people who don't know
exactly,
that
right.
term, right? So
But it also put a wrinkle in it because now everyone's years got extended, right? So now there's a whole nother because my recruiting class came in. Well, they're still recruiting for the next year, right? There's still
right.
another age group coming in. So now it's like I'm in the world's biggest recruiting class because now it's technically like two recruiting classes in one, right?
Mhm.
And then on top of that, all the veterans all got a year extended, right? So they're gonna all play another year, and you're still sitting there practicing, getting developed, and things like that. And so we had like on our roster, I think we had 25 to 28 receivers. Like it was pretty ridiculous.
25 to 28, is that what you said?
25 to 28 receivers. And so like you're fighting for every rep, you're fighting for like everything. It's just like it was ridiculous. It was chaos if that's probably the perfect word for it.
That's
Um
crazy.
yeah, and so like and then on top of that, so then after that first year of like nothing, then the second year, then we had a shortened season, right? So we had like you could practice and then you played a smaller amount of games and then whatever, okay. And this is a pretty big turning point. Not great for my playing time in university ball. But my receivers coach died of cancer suddenly. So
I think I heard that. Who was
he,
that again?
it was now Yokes. I'm blanking on his first name, but we call him Coach Jokes.
Hmm.
And he coached me in Team Manitoba. He kind of knew what my game was. He knew me personally. He recruited me. So then it was like that was like I was his guy,
Right.
right? Um, and what happened was the guy that they brought in, he was an assistant coach for them, and he was an alumni of them. So he had just finished playing for them. Liam Grace. Is he still the receivers coach for them? I don't think he is, um, but he
I would
might
have
be.
to go over it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know off the top of my head if he's still coaching. He coached throughout my entire my entire time with the Bisons, but and so it was just one of those things where he had buddies on the team, right? And so it was like it's kind of hard to beat that
Right.
when it comes to starting time, right? So he's obviously going to have more, and it's understandable, but he's going to have more favor to the guys that he played with and that he knows, right? And when it comes to his evaluations and things like that. Um, and so yeah, so he kind of got thrust into this role of receiver coach because, well, yeah, obviously the other guy died. So who are you going to put in? The guy that's the assistant coach, right? It makes sense. And um yeah, and so then it was just this it's been for that year anyway, it was like I was just redshirting. I had a great redshirt year. Great year of like practicing, being on scout team, talks from coach, uh yeah, talks from coach was like at the end of the year was like, hey, like we love your development that you're doing, and you're gonna probably start this next year, like that's kind of the way you're going, trending towards, and like we're just really pumped for this next year, right? Just put in the work in the off season and come ready for spring camp. So obviously you spend the time in the off season and spring camp comes around and I had a pretty good spring camp as well. And so it was like everything was looking good. And then all of a sudden training camp hit and it was like I was like group three. And it was like, whoa. Like what happened here? I feel like I was being, like and there was a big all of a sudden a big switch and it was like um and so yeah, it was just one of those things where the offense that they ran, it just didn't fit the game that I played. And that's totally fine. Things happen, right? But it was just they wanted guys that were quick and that were small, and I don't fit either of those options. So, um, and so my game was definitely overlooked a little bit more that way, and how I play. And so I did end up getting some time to play as a backup role and also got some springtime looks and spring games and things like that and preseason. Um, but I never was able to kind of crack that starting role. Never was able to get past that. And and so after 3 years of playing for the Bisons and just like going back to the beginning, right? Like I always had said I was gonna love playing the game and enjoy it, right?
Right.
And well, obviously, when you're not playing in the games, it makes it a little bit harder to kind of enjoy what you're doing, right? So, as I love the guys and love the coaches, it just seemed like the right time to. I had 2 more years of eligibility to kind of make a switch, and so I figured if I go play junior for a year, and then maybe get a look either develop in junior and maybe I get a shot at Bisons again or go somewhere else because I noticed also that a lot of the time guys from junior were getting recruited and getting put in the starting roles because they were getting promised starting roles as well, right? So then it was like um, a lot of times you're getting hopped by these guys that are playing junior, and so it was like, well, I'll go play junior then, right? So I went and played a year with the Rifles, and it was a fun year. It was fun because they so first look they were like, "Have you ever played slot back?" Well, I've never played slot back before. I've always been a wideout. So they were like, well, "We're gonna put you at inside slot." And and so as I transitioned to rifles, it was cool because it was like I'm gonna be a starter again. I get to play in games and like I'm the guy, and who doesn't want to be the guy, right? Like everyone wants to be the
To
guy.
be it.
So I went back to being the number one receiver, being the guy that the go-to guy. And so that year, um, I ended up being a top five receiver in the conference and had a very successful season and in that sense and it was fun because they brought in like I got to play slot back wide out. They had some tight end packages for me. I played tight end. I finally got my shot and like it was just cool how they just I got utilized everywhere and it felt like it was just playing, a little bit of like backyard football in a way. It's just like we're making up plays and having fun and so it was kind of like a renewed just enjoyment for the game and just being able to play and make new friends and make new teammates and travel, right? Like you're traveling across the country to play games and you feel professional. You're flying on private flights and all this crazy stuff, right? Like it's just a super cool experience and super thankful for it. And that ended up being my last season ever playing tackle football, which was not the way that I intended it to happen, but um, sometimes, injuries happen, right? So, I was actually in the off season, I was playing flag football. I don't know if you guys know what pit football is. It's a flag football league in Winnipeg. Um, and so I've enjoyed doing that. I do it every off season. I've been playing for the past now 5, 6 years or whatever. And we have a group of guys from Steinbach that we play with, and it's just for fun. It's a great time, and you play Friday, Saturday nights, and so I used it as an opportunity to play indoors, playing football, staying in the game. You're still playing football, catching footballs in the off season, right? So, but it just so happened I'm running a route, and I ended up blowing out my ACL, my MCL, my meniscus. And so that ended up killing my final year of eligibility for for junior football, and I didn't end up getting recruited to go play university anywhere. And so um, maybe it was an abrupt ending, but you know what? It was it was good though, because like yeah, I was lucky. I got my surgery quick. And so I tore it in February. I got my surgery in June, and I'm at the point. So this is only like a year ago that this happened, right?
Right.
So it's pretty recent. But I ended up missing that fall. So I didn't end up playing my last year of football. But I've ended up now at this point. I'm playing flag football again. So I'm pretty much to the point of full recovery at this point, and so. Um, but it's just been yeah, it just seemed like it was like, okay, my body said I'm done. And that's it for tackle football now. And so yeah, a unique ending, but yeah, I've been blessed to play every bit of levels in football here. So
I mean,
yeah.
I say yeah, it's definitely an accomplished, work of art, if you will. I mean, shoot, there's not a lot of guys that can say that, right? I mean, you got to play
Yeah.
with your brother Eric
Yeah, I got to play with Eric too. Yeah.
with the rifles
Yeah.
again, being like again Brian Dobie retiring this year, and I think he was at the Bomber playoff game and just being
Yeah.
honored. And I go all the way back to when they went to the
Hmm.
Vanier Cup in '01 and then won in '07, and just I've had a few conversations with him.
Yeah.
One in particular, where they went to the Vanier Cup in '01, and then I had talked to him the day after, right before the Bomber game, and he was very appreciative. And I was like, "Oh, he took that time I was 22 at the time, and these are the things, right?
Yeah.
Remember, and you've probably mentioned this here, but who are some of the role models and mentors that have helped you? And I know
Uh,
you mentioned some of them, but
Yeah, so obviously early on it would have been my dad and my cousins. That's kind of what ignited the football drive, and
right,
my dad coached me throughout Raiders, right? So huge supporter, huge encourager, and just like, obviously you play in the backyard, right? So like and so it's just one of those things. Our family lives, eats, and breathes football, and so obviously the start was always family. That's just how it was, and but moving into high school, I had three major coaches that really helped me in my development in football and also just in life. But that would be Coach Carey, and then Coach Jamie Peters and Coach Stephen Fettis. So all three of them, all were big on you're gonna have good character, but you're also gonna be a good sportsman. You're gonna be aggressive, and you're gonna be coachable, and you're all these good football words that everyone says that they are important, but they actually like they enforce them. They believe in them, and it proves to work. Obviously, the Sabres are a very successful program, and especially as of late have been way more successful in bringing guys to the next level, right? And so yeah, and it's just been one of those things where they've done a great job with the program, and they were a very impactful part of my way of or my sports walk, I guess, or my sports journey. throughout high school and definitely prepared me to go to that next level. Um, but yeah, and I mean, honestly, when it comes to the university sport, Coach Jokes was probably one of my bigger role models and Coach Carhut. Both of them coached me during U18 and both of them were big parts of my Bison time anyway, my time with the Bisons. And I know Coach Jokes did a lot to develop my footwork and parts of my game that I was maybe a little lackluster in and still maybe growing into a bit as well as um, I grew so fast, right? Like I was 6 foot in grade 8 and then I was 6'5" by grade 10. So like uh so I was kind of like a giraffe out there. I was a little goofy. Uh and coming in you know going into my grade 12 year, I was only like 160 pounds, 170 pounds, and at 6'5". So like I was a stick. And so obviously a combination of Coach Fettis and his workout program, but yeah, just over time, your body just eventually grows into your frame, right? So I went from 160 pounds in grade 11 to 220 pounds my first year of university. So like, you put on a ridiculous amount of weight at that point, right? And um, so then once I had that muscle and I had developed that a little bit more, it was easier to work on things like footwork and route running and explosiveness and speed and things like that that maybe I didn't have in the bag before. And so I feel like at each stage there was very pivotal coaches that were big parts of, my growth and in my athletic ability and my sports and my knowledge too, right? Like that's another big thing that people don't take into account with football is that football's a chess game. Like it's a chess match. And so every time before you start a play, you're analyzing the person that's in front of you, the whole defense as a whole. You're analyzing your play and what your route and how you're gonna, like you're stemming your routes and you're gonna make sure that, hey, like pre-snap, maybe they're gonna make an audible, right? Like there's so many different parts to the game that, in film study you can see that this DB, if he lines up at 8 yards, is actually zone coverage because he's cheating, right? Like um, and so there was parts of the game there where like, especially when it came to Bisons, they really integrated the mental side of the game, right? That's what sets people apart at that point is how can you mentally process the game quicker and how can you find ways to almost put yourself in a spot to succeed and almost cheat a little bit, right? Like you're looking on a cheat sheet almost. So
Well, it's funny you should say this because Andrew Harris brought it up and Tom Brady brought it up in an interview, I believe, with Rich Eisen during Super Bowl,
okay.
where Tom Brady said he knew what the Chiefs were doing
Yeah.
even before they did, and then Andrew Harris was talking about in the West Final in 2021. He goes, "Yeah, I knew exactly what they were going to do, and I lined up certain guys, and that guy was Ed Gainey, and this is how I was going to move, and I could visualize like holy smokes, like." And again, I remember going back personally in grade 10, and my former teacher is on the page. Hi, Ryan. Uh, where he would be very particular about running our routes, and
Yeah.
he would get like, mildly upset if we weren't running them right. Like this was just gym class. This wasn't football practice.
Yeah.
But I remember him coaching, and like that was key. Like hooks and slants. I almost said ladders, but um, all of that is like incorporated. It's not just running around,
Yeah.
and that's what some people fail to understand, which is fine. It's just there's more to it.
Yeah, exactly. And so um yeah, if you can learn to mentally prepare yourself and like even just something simple as having all the plays like across the board known, like a lot of players will be like, "Oh, this is my route on this play," right? But if you know what all the other routes are doing, you understand more of what your route is, right?
Yeah.
So And especially if things break down, let's say, it's scramble rules now. Well, now you know where that guy is and you know where that guy is and you can find the open space and kind of stuff like that. And especially when it came to like high school. So like Sawyer, very athletic quarterback, loves to move around the pocket. He can escape the pocket. A lot of times we were actually doing broken plays and just backyard football at that point and find the open space. And so for me, it was very important that I knew exactly where everyone was at all times so that I could be in the right spot and that kind of stuff. Um, and so I started, learning small parts of it in high school, and then obviously it grew more as you go to the next level. Once you hit the college level, that really pushes you to um yeah, it pushes you to put more work into the film room and figure out what's your DB, what's your opponent, what are you coming up against, what's the defense, right? Like on that's the cool thing that's maybe a little bit different than the NFL is that there's so many moving parts to um yeah, there's so many moving parts, and I think the Chiefs are a little bit like that, where they have so many option routes and so many different routes based on the coverage that they're given. That plays similar to what CFL does, I think, and the Canadian football almost. Canadian football, there's so many different options to your routes, and based on the pre-snap read of the coverage, right? Like um, pre-snap, all the receivers have to make the right read, okay, because they're all going to change their routes based on that, right? So, which makes it pretty cool, right? Like when you get it right, and especially in Bisons, right? Our entire offense was pretty much RPO based, so that's a run pass option. So at any play, you could run the ball, you could pass the ball, right? And and so you kind of need to know, hey, where's that linebacker at, right? Because that's the key read on this play. And if that linebacker is not there, be ready for the football because it's coming, right? Like, and if not, hey, maybe you should go and get ready to start blocking, right? Because we're going to be handing this football off. And so for us, it was like we're diagnosing certain key players and we're trying to figure out, what coverage they're running and you know usually it broke down to like three different coverages, but like it still was like yeah, like in Canadian football you've got match and you've got zone and you've got man coverage. So it kind of breaks it down pretty simple there. But
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Doug Flutie, I think he made the comments about 3, 4 months ago. He goes, a lot of the NFL offenses are like what CFL is now, which
mhm.
I don't think he's wrong. And what you talked about the Chiefs there, I mean, if you go back to Super Bowl 54, some of their stuff they were doing, what they do in general. So
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, you got a great knowledge base, and again, I think that's what's made you successful in your football career.
Yeah.
It's outstanding.
Mhm.
It truly is. I mean, I've kind of learned as I've gone along, and I think I know what I'm talking about. But you played the game,
Yeah.
and you get it, right? And I love what you say. At the end of
Mhm.
the day, it's just a game, and
Yeah.
and at the core.
Yeah.
It's about family, faith, and all of that, and I can see that. So good on you.
Well, and it's one of those things too, right? Like, I was lucky enough that like, I've got a lot of stuff outside of football that I've invested into too, right? So it was still hard. Like this past year, right? Like not, going to training camp and not playing games and like you're sitting there in fall and you're like, what do I do with myself? Like I'm used to being
Right.
gone every evening here, right? So there was definitely like an adjustment of like, okay, now what do I do, right? Like with my time and my life, because especially once I got to the college level, right? Like you are spending a lot of time, in that stadium playing and watching film and studying and breaking stuff down. And so there was a hole there that of time and investment that I needed to like figure out what to do with. So like I can't imagine someone who, football's their life, football's their all be all, like, and then, you retire or like, you have a career ending injury or something like, um, I can't imagine what that thought process is and the hard reality of that is, right? Like you see a lot of players get into, analysts and things like that because they just need to do something in football, right? Like, um, and so for me, I feel like this past fall I just filled it with fantasy football. I had like 8 teams going and like, and just oh man, I my parents bug me all the time. They're like, you know way too much about NFL football. I'm following every single like report and like
Yeah.
uh and that kind of stuff. And I totally get that part. But yeah, no, it's like um yeah, life after sports is a little weird for
Yeah,
sure.
it's
But
yeah, I can imagine. I know Rodney Harrison, who works for NBC. He opened
yeah.
up about some of that, some mental health. He'd be in a dark room and that sort of thing. But again, I'd have to research it a bit
Yeah.
more to know exactly what was all
But
going on there. But you see the guys like the Milt Stegals that are on the panel of TSN.
mhm.
The Davis Sanchez's, the Matt Dunnigans, etc. So yeah, there is that
Yeah.
again transition. Zach Claris for the Bombers, they're not talking contract extension past this year, which doesn't surprise me. So again,
Yeah, I
there
know.
is always the Milton Stiegel always used to say you got to think about football the moment you start playing football. So I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing a bit, but again, and I think you do. And I know this is a sports show, but you got something awesome coming up this weekend. I was there.
Yeah.
I saw you with your hat on this past Sunday. You want to talk about what's happening on spring break for you?
Yeah. So this coming Saturday, me and a group of friends and young adults from our church in Steinbach, Calvary Church, we are going on a missions trip. We're going to fly out to Mazatlan, Mexico. We're going to go bless a bunch of kids at a school in the red light district there. We have missionaries that run a school out there, and so pretty much, yeah, we're gonna be out there for just a week. It's nothing too crazy, nothing too long, but we've got a bunch of skits and plays prepared and songs and games and crafts and we're just gonna go and we're also bringing a bunch of suitcases of supplies and we're just going to go bless this school which it's been obviously not the most smooth sailing in Mazatlan right now with cartel activity and stuff like that. And so we're gonna go out there. We're going to support people as best we can and shine a light out there when it's pretty dark. Um, and so yeah, the YWAM base out there. YWAM is youth with a mission and so they've so kindly opened up their place so that we can stay there. And we're also going to do some soccer ministry out there as well. So we're running some soccer days where kids can just come and play soccer and we just get to be there and hang out and play and just be yeah, just be a good influence for them and maybe give them a little bit of advice here and there, but really just building that relationship is the big part, right? Like they're going to remember that forever. And so yeah, we are lucky enough to fly out there and go bless some people for the next week while spring break happens. So
So good. I still remember the fundraiser for the soup lunch. I was raving about the soup for
it
about
was fantastic.
for about a week, and figured I had time because the football games were only starting at 2, so I had time. And,
Yeah.
I still would have done it. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
don't worry. I was looking at it. If the Vikings were playing, the game was going to be on in the corner there for sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
The kickoff was only 2 o'clock. Yeah, Vikings Rams were at 2 that day.
Yeah.
But that's all good, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know you that well, but I do know that you have a good head on your shoulders, and
Mm.
I think the future's bright for you,
Hmm.
Jaden. It's been awesome to hear your story, to understand, and you know what? There can always be a part two as well, but. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you would like to maybe touch on that I haven't brought up? I always kind of leave that open at the end here.
Yeah, I'd actually like to touch on the flag football side of things a little bit as well.
Sure thing.
Because like there's obviously that's becoming a much more popular flag football is like it's becoming a sport, right? Like I think they're putting it as an honorary Olympic sport in this next Olympics, right? But big talks about having it become like a sport in university, right? Like it's going to become kind of this like almost the future of the sport a little bit more, just because, um, yeah, the injuries and the contact and the concussions, right? Like that's a big scary thing for people, and that's just the way the sport's moving. Even though I don't mind a little contact here and there, and obviously there's some people that still enjoy it. But uh, flag football is really fun though, right? Like I'm a big supporter of it. I've been playing it for years, and I'm actually lucky enough I get to go to a national tournament this year, in this summer,
Great.
in July.
And where's that?
So Montreal.
Okay.
Yeah, so like early July, me and a bunch of guys from Steinbach, we have a team that plays in Winnipeg here, and we've kind of worked our way to the top division there for flag, and so now we're kind of taking it to the national level. We're gonna see what we got against the best of the best, and so but yeah, so like gonna have a huge opportunity there to kind of experience a different level of competition in that as well, right? Like um, but even if you want to talk about like, after tackle football, like we've got guys in this league because there's like this league's huge in Winnipeg. Like there's 130 teams. Um, and like it's impressive. Like, and so we have guys that are like in their 50s and they're still playing flag football, right? Like, so like, and they're just having a blast on a Friday night. It's great. And so like what a way to not only like help kids develop when they're younger, right? Like and not have to necessarily take hits and things like that, but they can develop route running and more of the passing side of the game. But then on top of that, it's something you can do way longer. The longevity of it is way more sustainable than tackle football, obviously, right? And taking those hits. And so,
Well, and it's become more popular with the Summer Olympics in 2028. They'll
yeah.
be introducing the flag football as well. So, I mean, again, you know what? If you can't breakdancing, I don't think breakdancing is going to be in Summer Olympics next time. But if you can have this, like, you should have football.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And and no, I'm curious to see how that's gonna, how that's gonna go, right? Like I think it's a fantastic idea, right? Like for Olympics. Football should have been in there a long time ago. Um, but like, I think flag football is something that maybe is a little more inviting for other countries, maybe that haven't, necessarily spent all this time playing tackle football and learning technique in that sense. Maybe flag football is a little easier to grasp, right? Like you're not necessarily hitting each other and that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, no, I'm excited to see how the talent around um yeah, on the national level, right? Like across the world here. Let's see. I know obviously the NFL is bringing games to Germany and I think they have one in Australia now
Yeah,
and things like
there's
that.
one
Like
coming to Australia. Yeah.
yeah, and they're moving across the world. They're trying to bring football across the world, right? So,
Yes.
so it would not surprise me if that is something that catches on in the Olympics and becomes an actual thing. Um, whether it's flag football or tackle football, I don't care. Both of them are great, but yeah, I just think that you want to talk about flag football. The development side of things is huge, right? And you're also seeing like, I mean, Jaden Daniels, right? Like he's using the VR virtual reality system to develop himself as a player as well. I don't know if you've heard about this.
I have seen some clips of this. Yes.
Yes. So like when he went to LSU, they did this test on him where it was like they're gonna use him in virtual reality to cognitively like use his brain, right? So they're speeding up the play on VR so that when he goes to actually play in the game, it slows everything down for him. And
Very.
so then he's seeing the game now. He says he's like it slows it right down because he's used to playing at 1.5 speed, right? So and so like you see him as a rookie come into, the NFL and go to the NFC Championship, and he looks like a seasoned vet in the biggest moments, right? Like everything just seems easy for him. Like I'm curious to see how that catches on as well in that world as well. Like in the virtual world is like using that to also, especially in Canada too, right? Like we have a lot of winter. And so we don't have the blessing to run around outside all year, round and train like that. So maybe to also be able to have that in your pocket as well, that you can also just, at least if you're not maybe doing physical reps, but you're doing mental reps the entire winter, right? Like um interesting way to look at it. I found that fascinating. Like just to
That is something.
results seem
Wow.
to work. So
Well, I mean, and everybody's looking for that extra edge, right? And so, yeah,
yeah.
if you can, if they can do that to Jaden Daniels, then okay, well, it could be the next guy coming up, right? So, again, to compete with the Patrick Mahomeses or that sort of thing, right? So that's very fascinating. Again, I heard a snippet of it, but wow, we sure gave some great insights there, Jaden. It's
Yeah. But
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he did look like a seasoned vet, and everybody wondered why the Bears didn't draft him instead of Caleb. Can't even call a timeout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple mental parts of the game. Anyway,
Yes,
but
it's true. It's true. 100%.
yeah.
It's true. It's wild. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Right on. Uh
Awesome.
as I say, this has been good, Jaden.
Yeah.
To have you on
Absolutely.
here and talk about your story.
Mm.
And you know what? I think there should be a part two sometime. But
Sounds
you
good.
know, I'll wish you all the best with this coming week in Mexico there. I think that's gonna be awesome
Yeah.
for you and the team.
Mhm.
And yeah, just wish you all the best in life's journey. And yeah, I will have you on again. I'll figure out a time.
Sounds good.
We,
Well,
we, we, we
thanks
we
so much.
can, yeah, for sure. We can talk about the Vikings. We can see who they may, maybe Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
We,
anyway.
we've seen that movie before, but
Yeah, oh, I know. Yeah.
yeah,
So
so that's fun. But yeah, all the best, Jade. Really
awesome.
appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care.
Yeah, all right. Bye bye.